sun's always shining in our hearts. Glad of that. I thought as this week and all this went on, it's a shame, ain't it? It's just, instead of our leaders leading us in prayer and telling us that we need to turn to God and His Word, they say other things out of their mouth, and then people takes it just evil people, ain't it? Evil, wicked world we live in. That's just all I can say. But it sure could have been done different through a word of prayer. A bowed head. No arms, no weapons. The weapons are going to be put into plowshares one day, ain't they? Going to be turned to nothing. And, there's no weapon will be against our God. Our God's more powerful than any weapon man could even come up with. But one weapon that's worse than arms is that right there. More deadly, that tongue, than anything that the army or the arms has got out there. Can tire up more our mouth, right? But I tell you what, I trust in the one that's on the throne. I ain't kidding you. I trust on Him that is on the throne. I don't trust anything other than Him and this Word. This is His Word. I'm going to live by it, by the best of my ability, and I'm going to die by His Word. And I'm glad that I'm saved this morning. In a land that we live in, I love this land. I believe it's the greatest country ever. Is and still will be, as long as God's hand's upon it. But soon, and we see it even in our eyes, we might as well brace up for it. He's pulling it out, and judgment's coming. And it's a shame that we have to see what we see as His people. But He's not going to put more upon us that we're able to bear. He's going to take us home. That trump's going to sound. It could be today. It really could be today. We don't know what tomorrow holds. But we know who holds tomorrow. And we know He holds us in His hand. And boy, I just praise Him. I'm just filled up. Because our young people, I feel for them. Kids, they don't even know. I got a niece that's 24, 5 years old. And just tore up what she's seen and heard with her eyes. And if it didn't move people, it should have moved us closer to God, right? And you know what she said to my mom? Said they need Jesus. And that's what I've always said. They need Jesus. All those people, they need Jesus, right? I mean, I know they're a right way of doing things, but they sure are a wrong way of doing them too, right? But they're a right way of doing things, and I think it could have been done a whole lot more godly than what it was, right? All right. We're in Job, chapter 29, and this 29, 30, and 31 is going to be the last answer Job is given to his three friends. They've went through 3 rounds, all but Zophar. He said he's had enough. He didn't say nothing else after 2 rounds. So he didn't have nothing more to add, I guess. But here Job has explained down through his 4 or 5 chapters here. He just keeps going. And then after Job quits, that's it for Job. Then we're going to hear from a feller named Elihu that was in the crowd. Then we're going to hear from God. And then we're going to get to the end of Job. We're almost there. And I tell you, Job's been a good book. I like Job. I never studied through Job. It's the first time for me. I mean, sure, we might have done a couple of lessons, just the highlight points, but nothing, the whole book. I mean, it's just amazing what all God has put in here for us. To what? To dig out, to learn, to study, and to learn of His Word. But here in 29, we'll go find here in this chapter, we find where Job says he continues with this parable here. And he says, moreover, Job continued his parable and said, and here's what he says, oh, that I was in months past, as in the days when God preserved me. You know what? He's sitting in ashes, body all sore, aching, all that the devil was put up on him. And you know what he's doing in this chapter? He's looking back. He's saying, oh, what? If it was in the months past. We can see how many, Job, this didn't affect him just days. He said months. Now, I don't know how many, it don't say. It could have been 6 months. It could have been 3. It could have been, as many months. But he said months. That's a long time to be in this state. Huh?
He was missing him all in one thought.
Yes, that's right. But he said, when his candle shined upon my head, talking about God's light, shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle. Job he'd been following God what? Days of his youth. But what was it? Was it Solomon said for the youth, to there you go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he wants the young, right? He wants us young. Here, Job, he said he's young. It's in the days of my youth. It says, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me. I thought of this. He said the Almighty was what? Was yet with me. In a way, Job's saying God has forsaken him in that verse. His children is no more. He said his children was around him, but he's saying God has forsaken him. Through all this book, I've always pointed that out. He never blames the devil. Have you ever noticed that? He always blames God. He blames God for his distress. When I washed my steps, what? With butter, and rock poured me out rivers of oil. Now, he did not say nothing about gold and silver. He said what? Butter and oil. That means his flocks, butter. He was rich in what? Food, butter. He was rich in oil, the vineyards, all the crops was good. And now, where's he at? He lost all, right? Said, when I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. Now, we're going to learn a little bit about Job. In this chapter, I said last week, 52 times you see I and me or my. 52 times in just this one chapter. I mean, he's in a way, it's Job's way, his little ego, he's telling what he used to be. Here, he said he went to the gate through the city. I went out to the gate through the city when I prepared my seat in the street. You know what he was? That's where they done the business. He was well up in, not the mayor, but whatever. He was part of the city's magistrate or whatever, done the laws, whatever. He was part of that.
Does your verse end in an exclamation point right there?
Yes.
It's almost like he's kind of being bold in it when he's speaking.
Ego, yeah, pride.
He's kind of raising his voice a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like it almost, when I first read that, I thought, well, he shouted this at him.
Right.
And sort of probably in anger, frustration.
But if you see this, as you read this, you see pride coming out. You don't. That's what got a hold of Job here in these next couple of chapters here. That here in 29, he's showing all that he used to be. In 30, we're going to find out where he puts where he's at now and what he lost. When all this, when the devil done this to him. But it said, I prepared my seat in the street. The young men saw me and hid themselves, and the aged arose and stood up. What's he saying? He was dignified. He come up on the scene. The young ones, they just sort of scattered. Even the aged, he showed respect to them, but you know what? They respected him, right? Said the princes, now this is people in power, refrained talking and laid their hand on their mouth. They wouldn't even, when he was there and he spoke, they hushed, they listened. Said the nobles held their peace and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. See, when the ear heard me, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. gave approval of him. We didn't know much about Job except he lost all, right? But you know, he's valuable to the society here. I mean, he was a valuable part of society. Look what he done here. Because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, the orphans, and him that had none to help him. You know, Job had an open heart. He didn't want nobody to suffer. He seen somebody suffering, he helped them, didn't he? That's what he's saying here. The blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. You know, she's sad. When he found out she's sad, Job made her sing for joy. Said, I put on righteousness. Now look what he done. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. You know, actually his righteousness was what? As a filthy rag. He didn't see it as that at this time, right? Because he said, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. His justice was as a robe and a diadem. Diadem is a crown. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. You know, he was on the board of directors of the blind school. I mean, that's what he's saying here. And the lame, you know, he was there for them. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not, I searched out. Now, I'm gonna point something out in that little verse. First, he was a father to the poor. And then what he gave said the cause. That means they might have been a cause come up, but what did he do? He didn't just give to every cause. Now think of that. You know, a lot of people give to the wrong things. Because what you have to do is what he done here, which I knew not. If you don't know the cause, what do you have to do before you give? You got to, I searched out. You have to search it out. See if it's right. Too much out there that would just love to what? They have a cause. You know, a lot of causes are great. They are great. But a lot of the money you give to some of these causes, you know how much really gets there? 15% maybe? Where did the other go? You have to search it out. You know, I love when you know your money is 100% to the Lord. Right? You can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. You give 100% to him. Because he'll spread it out where it's needed, right? But that's what he said. He said, a cause which I knew not, I searched out. He searched out before he gave, before he helped. And I break the jaws of the wicked and pluck the spoil out of his teeth. Now, it didn't say that he killed the wicked or took them out. What did he say? All he done was break their jaws, their fangs. What they would harm people with, he broke it to where they couldn't harm people again. You know, and he took the spoil out of his teeth. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. You know, in his mind, he said, I'm going to die. Look what all I got. And I'm just going to die in my nest. You know, the nest, he was snugged up, right? And then what happened? He was like in a fairyland, right? And then what happened? Overnight, it turned to what? A pumpkin. I mean, overnight. He was in a fairyland. He had everything. And then overnight, it was gone, right? And he said, I shall die in my nest. He thought he was going to die just in peace. And I shall multiply my days as what? As the sand. He thought he was going to live a long age. My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. Boy, I like that. That's what Brother Greg preached on, I think. Psalms 1. The tree, the roots by the waters, what you flourish, that's what that meant. His root was spread out by the waters. What? He was flourishing. He was flourishing. His life was flourishing. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. That means he could protect everything he had. You know, the Sabians and that other tribe that come and stole and killed. You know, it all happened boom, boom, boom. He didn't have a chance to do nothing, right? You know, and here he said his bow was renewed in my hand. And to me, men gave ear and waited and kept silence at my counsel. After my words, they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them. You know, Job, in a way you could see, boy, he really had it. He had a little proud streak, didn't he? I mean, he said every word, boy, they just hushed, they'd shut up, you know, they listened to everything I said and all this, you know, and they waited for me as the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my countenance they cast not down. I chose out their way and set chief. He set chief, and dwelt as what? As a king in the army, as one that comforteth. I can't hardly say that. Okay, the mourners. You know, Job, he was a chief man. And you know, in that whole chapter there, like I said, 52 times you find I, me, my. Just look down through there, you'll see he had a proud streak on him. Now here in chapter 30, as we see, now his wealth and all he had has went to poverty. And he addresses that in this chapter. He says, but now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. You know, the kids, remember the kids would run and hide? Now what are they doing? They're mocking, making fun of him. He's outside the city in ashes. And you know what? They look at Job instead, and you know what? That's what them three friends did, didn't they? Instead of helping Job and lifting him up, what did they? They stomping him down. And you know, Job is saying, you know, I thought of this. Chapter 29, Job's lifting himself way up. This 30, he's on a pity party now. Yeah, I mean, in a way, that's why you describe it like that. Said, yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste, who cut up mallows. Now, these mallows, it was some kind of plant with salty roots, and they would cut them up by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. It's what the poor would do. When they went out in the wilderness, the homeless, the poor, had nothing. This is what they ate. You know, I thought that John the Baptist, he come eating what? Locusts and honey. Now, locust we think is the locust bug. I think even the commentators think it's the locust, some kind of thing off of a tree, a locust tree. I don't know. It could be a locust bug too. Anyway, put honey on them. You never know. But you know what? When you go into the wilderness, you'd eat anything, wouldn't you? Yeah, that's right. If you're hungry, you're going to eat. And that's what they said. They would, for want and famine, they were solitary. You know, a lot of people, that when you're in want and you're in need, fleeing into the wilderness and for a time desolate and waste. You know, I thought of today, what we have, all the homeless, all these people, little backpacks. And have you ever thought of that? You know, when I read these verses, I thought of that. They go out into the wilderness. Instead of going to where somebody could help them, or they try to help themselves, you know, they're like solitary. They're like lonely. Some of them, they want that. Some of them actually want that. But now some, they don't want that. They would like to be helped out, you know. But some are choose it. And, you know, I thought of this. For want and famine, they were solitary. They were they're alone, and they flee into the wilderness. They're away from everything. But said they were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief. to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed. And brayed means they holler like a donkey. Under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And now am I their song, yea, I am their byword. So Job describes the poorest of the poorest, and then he says, now I'm their byword. These people are making fun of me. Look how far I have went down, That's what he said. Said, and now I'm their song, yea, I'm their byword. They abhor me. What's that mean, abhor? Detest, hate. It's the worst hate that you could have. I don't see how people hate people. Do you? It could really harm someone. Hate goes that much. I'm glad I'm not that way. I thank God for Jesus. I'm glad I have the love of the Lord in my life. Without him, I could have a heart of hate, of detest and hate. Boy, we see that here in our country, don't we? A lot of people's got a heart of hate, detest, abhorring people. They don't see no good in nobody or nothing, right? Boy, I tell you, they need Jesus. That's like what my niece said. Yeah, that's right. Right. But a lot of them in this world, and they're leaders, and they can't sleep peaceably right now. Right? They're tore plumb up to where they can't do nothing. They cannot enjoy peace. And one reason why they can't, they don't have Jesus. If they had Jesus, yeah, it would help them, right? I ain't saying all of them ain't. Somebody, I'm sure they're born again Christian, I hope, in one of them positions up there, I hope. But we don't know 100%, do we? My. Because he hath loosed my cord and afflicted me, they have also let loose the bridle before me. Now here he says he hath loosed my cord. Now he's speaking of God there. He's loosed his cord, his body. He's talking about his body now. Upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. This word mar means they break it up. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of waters, as a flood that comes in. In the desolation, they rolled themselves upon me. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my soul as the wind, and my welfare passes the way as a cloud. And now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. What the sinews? What? His muscles, his bones. It's speaking of a little bit of what Satan put on. The Lord said you could do anything to his body, but you ain't going to touch his life. Satan put the worst, the worst that you could upon. We can't even probably imagine what Job went through here. His bones ached, every muscle ached. We get a knee ache, everyone. You know what I'm saying? We get a headache, everyone. Think of something that Satan put on Job, but completely the whole body ached. His bones, all the way down to his bones and his muscle, everything. The devil done his thing. God said, you can't take his life. But you know what he done? He done the worst he could do to Job, didn't he? And you could tell the way Job has spoken throughout this. And even when the three friends come in, they put him on the defense. He had to speak stuff that he wouldn't have. I don't think Job would have said things that he did in his right body and mind. You know what I'm saying? I really don't believe that he would have went, but he was pushed. They just kept, taking a poker to him and whatever, and putting him on the defense. And he said things against God that he shouldn't really say it, which we're going to see. God will point that out here shortly in some of when he starts to speak. But it says, by the great force of my disease, is my garment changed. It bindeth me about as the collar of my coat. He hath cast me into mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. See, he's talking about God. God has done this. Look what he's done to me. He cast me into mire, into mud. He's laying outside the city in the dump. I'm like dust and ashes all over him. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. He said he cries to God, and God don't hear him. I stand up, and thou regardest me not. Thou art become cruel to me. I hate that Job said that. You know, God loves us. He wouldn't be cruel to no one, right? He shows love. If somebody's going to be cruel to somebody, you know who it is? It's the devil.
I think this is the perfect example of human not having the patience that we ought to have for God and God's time. Because we cry out and we ask God for this and we ask God for that. Sometimes it feels like he don't hear us.
Right.
I know I felt that way before. When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? He might say no.
Right.
He probably did say no if I didn't hear from him in a certain amount of time or something. If I'm praying about a car or a job or whatever. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he says no.
Right. And we don't want to take that.
We don't want to take that. We don't have the patience for it neither. We
Right.
want an answer right now.
But that's a good point you made there, because in the book of Job, what do we always say? The patience of Job. The patience of Job. Don't we always say that? But you know what? As we've studied this, we see that Job didn't have a whole lot of patience. He had patience, right? He kept his integrity, but boy, I tell you, he was his friends against him, and as he's describing in this chapter, the young people making fun of him, byword, they hated him, they detested him. I mean, here he was a noble, feller to begin with, and then all of a sudden he's chopped down, he's outside the city, ashes and all over him, and he's sore, see what I'm saying? But still, we say the patience of Job. Well, he did have patience, but yes, he didn't either. I mean, we can see it both ways.
This causes me to have to turn my eyes back on myself here.
Yeah, sure.
Because if I'm in this situation, having gone through everything he's went through, I can't even imagine.
Right.
But what I can imagine, I'm thinking to myself, I might have said something even worse than what Job is saying right here.
Right.
It causes me to turn back and look at me.
Yeah.
As in, how would I handle it? And I don't think I could.
Right.
I'll be honest. Why lie about it? You know what I mean? I don't think I could handle what he's gone through to this point. I might have said something even worse.
Right.
That's why we need books like this, I think.
Yeah.
So that we can study and have a reflection back on ourselves.
Right.
To help us grow, to help us get more out of it and try to realize that we need to have more patience. If something happens in my life, I might come back to this and say, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, okay, calm down.
Yeah.
Whatever the situation is,
Yeah.
chill out. Think about Joe.
Yeah. Because you'll never be in the situation as Job was, that bad.
Right.
That's what I always think. Like I said a while ago, we might have a headache, knee ache, break a leg, but just think of the whole body, and losing everything, and all that Job went through. Yeah, you could reflect back to him, but one thing is, a lot of people out here, they blame God like Job's doing here, right? Everything that happens, they blame God. I mean, God, where are you at? Why did you let this happen and all? But they don't give the devil. He's the one that's doing all this harm.
I'm sitting here thinking about the times that I've done it in my life. God,
Yeah.
Why? God, why?
Right.
God, why?
Right. Question. But said, and thou art become cruel to me. With thy strong hand thou opposest thyself against me. Now he's blaming God for being against. Thou liftest me up to the wind, Thou causest me to ride upon it, and dissolveth my substance. And then for I know that thou wilt bring me to death, and to the house appointed for all living. You know, he says to God, I know I'm going to die. You're going to bring me to death. He, you know, in a way, throughout Job here as we read, he thought death was that right now or next day, you know, or wasn't going to. I mean, think of all this up on his body and the sores and scraping it, and you know what I'm saying. I mean, he thought death. And you know what? Sometimes we do that, right?
Be a welcome thing.
Yeah. But you know, one thing is, he looked and he said, you know, that death was there, but he says one day, he said, into the house appointed for what? All living. Get that? We all die, right? We all die. Said, howbeit, he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? Now here, he said, you know, in a way I see that, boy, wasn't I good? God, you know, he's speaking to God here. Said, didn't I do this? Didn't I do this to the poor? Didn't I do this, and this? And, you know, and all that he wrote down in the last chapter. When I looked for good, then like, what was this? Then evil came upon me. Every time we try to do good, what? Evil is always present. I thought of that when I read that verse. And when I waited for light, there came darkness. You're sitting there, you wonder, when is the light going to shine? And what darkness come upon? My bowels boiled and rested not. That's his inside. You know, this disease, just the heat of all his organs on the inside, his bones hurt, even all of his muscles. You think of how he's describing himself here. And rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up and I cried in the congregation. I'm a bother to dragons. Now, this word dragons meant, they think it meant the wild dogs, hyenas, jackals, something over there in the east. You know, wild dogs, because you know what? Around trash dumps, what do you got? Them dogs come to eat, you know. So what did he say? I'm a bother to them, he said. And a companion to what? Owls. Owls meant buzzards, vultures, you know, probably birds of prey that was preying around this, the heap, the trash dump. Said, my skin is black upon me. Boy, this disease turned his skin charred, black. And my bones are burned with heat. That's just, he said that twice. Inside of him just burned all the time. My harp also is turned to mourning, and my organ into the voice of them that weep. You know, his musical instruments that used to sing glory and sing beautiful songs, what did it turn into? Mourning and what? Weeping. Tears and crying. You know, that's what he says, my harp and my organ. And then here in chapter 31, I'm going to try to whiz through this. I don't know if I can or not. But Job is speaking. Now he turns, okay, first 29 was what he lost. 30 is the condition he's in. 31 is this is the last chapter that he's going to speak to these friends that's sitting around. And he answers a lot of questions. He said, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? And what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is not destruction to the wicked, and a strange punishment to the workers of iniquity? Doth not he see my ways and count all my steps? Talking of God, he does. He sees all of our ways. He counts our steps. He knows our every sin. You know, Job is speaking in this chapter of his integrity. He's saying, God knows my ways. He knows, he in a way he's vindicating himself through here, through his chapter. He said, if I have walked with vanity, if he's in falsehood, in vain, or if my foot had haste to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity. He said, if I've walked. A lot of people think their sin's going to balance. I thought of that, even balance. Like put all my sin here and all my good here, and if it balances out. I thought of that when he said that, let me be balanced. But, he said what? That God may know my integrity. God knew Job's integrity. Why? Because he let Satan do what he done, didn't he? He said, have you tried my servant Job? He knew Job. He knew Job he knew he'd last. Now you think, boy, he knows me. I don't think I'd last, right? So God knows not to put that on me, right? I mean, I was thinking that. Tim was saying the same, in a way, that's what he's saying. But you know what? God knows us and what he could put up on us. And he knew Job and Job's integrity that he held on. If my step hath turned out of the way, and my heart walked after mine eyes, and if any blot hath cleaved to my hands, then let me sow, and let another eat. Yea, let my offspring be rooted out. If mine heart hath been deceived by a woman, or if I have laid wait at my neighbor's door, you know what that's coveting? Adultery. Lust of the eyes, and lust of the flesh. That's what he's talking of here. He says, then let my wife grind into another. What? Let her play as a harlot. And let others bow down upon her. For this is a heinous crime, yea, it is an iniquity to be punished by the judges. For it is a fire that consumeth to destruction, and would root out all mine increase. If I did despise the cause of my manservant or my maidservant, when they contended with me, what then shall I do when God riseth up, and when he visiteth, what shall I answer him? Did not he that made me in the womb make him? And did not one fashion us in the womb? I like that. I'm going to stop there. We'll start back in 16. It won't take long to get through the rest of that chapter. But it says, I like this. Did not he that made me in the womb make him? He made me, he made you. We can just point to each other. Who made us? God did. Right? Huh? God made us all. And you know what? We might all be different. But you know what? He made us. He made each and every one. He made all of us. Some's got the same thinking. But then, I'm going to say Cindy, she don't think like I do, all the time. But sometimes we're similar, But see, God made us. I like that. I said that. He made us, and and did not one fashion us in the womb. What did he do? He's the one fashions. They say it's pure murder, ain't it? Abortion. I mean, God gives life upon conception. Why? Because conception, it starts, and you know what? He's in there, he molds, right? He molds us, made us in the... That's what it says. And did not one fashion us in the womb? Who else could do that but God? He made us. And I thought of looking at that and looking at, did not he make me in the womb, make him? And we look at one another. That should put us, as Job in a way was prideful. And that was one thing. You could see that he's proud and puffed up. But one way when we look at that God made us in the womb, and he made not only me, he made you, that should put us in a level playing field, shouldn't it? I'm no better than you, you're no better than me. I mean, have that attitude. Have a humble attitude. Not, look what I've done. When somebody, and Job, that one chapter, you see the eyes, me's, and my's. That's part of what God's going to get him here shortly. We're going to get to that. And he's going to attack, what's he going to attack? The pride. You know what? In our nation, pride. Pride cometh before fall. There are a lot of proud, prideful people that will not bow to a loving, kind God that loves them. Why? They won't break that pride. I'm glad I bowed on this side of eternity. And if you've not, need to. Need to bow before him and say, God, here I am. Here I am. Use me, right? A lot of people, that we've lost humility. You lose humility, you're going to lose humanity, right? That's the road we're down. A lot of them's losing their humanity. What? Their morals. Everything that God stands for. They lose it. They lose it because they have no humility. And Lord, just help us to realize God made me, he made you. You might be going through something that I don't even know. People, and I pray, a lot of people have been missing here. I just pray for them. God, you know what they're going through. Help them. Touch them. Uplift them. Don, Kenny, I could just go back through the congregation, as we pray. And pray situations, things. Well, God wants to hear from us. He wants us to hear. He wants to hear our prayers, right? He knows what we need, but he wants us to what? He said, ask because you have not. Have we really asked him? I'm glad he's kept this virus away from us, that we're able to come and learn of him. It would hurt me where we couldn't gather in his name. And a lot of churches are still not open. Still not. I mean, from March, they have not opened their doors yet. God help them. God help our churches, all the churches, to get back open. If you have to wear masks, that's fine. But get back open and praise him, right? I mean, really. I mean, if you can't take your 6 foot, God wants us what? I think he wants us to be on fire. It's time for the church to arise. We're going to rise. That Trump's going to say we're going. But before that, we need to arise and be bold for him. And I believe that we can make a difference. We can make a difference. Y'all pray for us.